All right, man, we left off. We are continuing on in the chapter 5 here of the men's certification. Make sure that light's not on there. The clock will start ticking off the last 3.5 years, called the end number 4. And again, this is 42303, Feast of Unleavened Bread. We left off on page 34 of the book, and just remember the main subjects that we're dealing with are all of Yahweh's prophecies will be fulfilled, and what occurs when sin is unrestrained. And this is really going to be a big part of what we're going to be going through this evening. We went through some of it last week, but a big part of it is going to be continued this evening on what occurs when sin is unrestrained. And again, those scriptures that are going to be reinforced: Daniel 7:25 through 27, Daniel 9:27, and Deuteronomy 28:22 through 24. Those are going to be those main scriptures. Again, they're going to be reinforced throughout this lesson here. Our vocabulary words for this evening, the things to be on the lookout for, okay, is indignation and fury. We can see that's going to be found. We'll find that in Isaiah 34:1. Which is truthful, which they truthfully refer to Yahweh's righteous judgments, and that's what indignation and fury. It's not wrath, it's not anger, it's not anything like that. Remember, that has to go with the twisting of the words of what the Roman Catholic Church wants us to believe, that Yahweh is this vengeful being and not a loving heavenly Father. So this indignation and fury actually refer to his righteous judgments. In Isaiah 34:3, we'll see where mountains, we're dealing with mountains, and of course, in this instance here, we're dealing with mountains as places of illicit worship. And, well, just what is illicit? Well, that's another word, and that refers to sex that has been defiled by mankind. Okay? We're going to be covering that as well. We've covered a little bit of it already, but again, this illicit refers to these acts that have been this act that has been defiled by mankind. This screech owl in Isaiah 14:15 is none other than Lilith or Lucifer, which is the wife of Yahweh, or Hillel, and we'll be dealing with that a little bit toward the end of class. Darkness, I think we've gone through this one already once before, but again, darkness is listed in the side note of Genesis 1:2, when you look off to the side. But darkness simply means to be led astray because of false doctrine. It also means misery, death, destruction, ignorance, wickedness, and sorrow. And lastly, we have this word Philadelphia. It's not referring to the city that's halfway almost on the East Coast. That's not what it's referring to. But this Philadelphia in Revelation 3:7 is actually where the true love of Yahweh is taught. And of course, we know that the true love of Yahweh is Yahweh's righteous 613 laws. So these are the vocabulary words to kind of be on the lookout for. We left off on page 34. I think we're just getting into purgatory. How it was talking about like the rapture and various other doctrines of the church that are actually not found in the scriptures. If you take a look on page 34, the last paragraph over there, we're talking about, he says it's not in the Bible. It's like the invention of the Catholic Church, like purgatory. And I've got it here, verse 73 is how I have it written out. And this should tie in pretty well with what's written in the Yisrayl Says program, if you're following along with that. But it says they've changed it now. There is no purgatory anymore. They took it out and decided they were going to do away with it because there was not, notice this, there was not enough money in it. So it was a revenue generator, to generate revenue for the church. That's what it was for, Pastor shows. If your Uncle Ben died, you could pay enough money to get him out of purgatory. It wasn't quite righteous enough to go to heaven, or he wasn't quite righteous enough to go to heaven, so he stopped him halfway in between in a place called purgatory. But you could pay enough money and send them on to heaven. This didn't work. Pastor shows it didn't work. It was too irrational, even for the idiots to fall for, he shows. It just didn't make any sense. He says it was even worse than the first day being the seventh day. Okay, but yet the whole world has been deceived and following along with that doctrine. It's just that their eyes haven't been opened yet to that. Slowly but surely, men, they're coming around. Their eyes are being opened to these things. So if we take a look here in the next one down here, it says, verse 2, it says, it's going to be with the people, so with the preachers. So we're dealing with Isaiah chapter 24 is the scripture that Pastor is talking about here. Isaiah 24:1, and this is what we covered toward the tail end of last week, and now we're in verse 2 here. He says, it's going to be with the people, so with the preachers. The servants, so with the owners, with the mistress. And he says, the whores and the whoremongers, I added that, he says, the boy rapists and the girl rapists, those things. It's going to be on everybody. This calamity, this destruction is going to involve the entire world. Okay, and the only people that are going to escape that are going to be those who have the protection of Yahweh. And the only way you can have the protection of Yahweh, men, is to come to the place that Yahweh has chosen to establish his name and learn what that is. And then practice those things. Okay? That's the protection of Yahweh. That's how we're going to be protected. Verse 4. Okay, now I want you to highlight this next sentence, the next two sentences here. Highlight this, and it says, verse 4, the earth mourns. Highlight that. Right now, yes, it is mourning. Our rivers and streams are defiled. The death is there. Make sure, men, that you highlight all of that, because we're going to see that again. Okay, the earth mourns right now. Yes, it is mourning. Our rivers and streams are defiled. Death is there. And Pastor shows. He says, no, it's not a substance poured out by an angel up there causing it. There were many damnable gods here on earth who caused it. Okay. It was the teaching. It was the rejection of the law. Remember, go back to Genesis 1:1-2. Go back to that, because that's where it's coming from. It's the gods. It started with them, and it continued on. That Satan was able to convince mankind to follow that same way, and they corrupted our streams, our rivers, and our lakes. If you want to think about Genesis 1:1-2, where Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. Remember, and then the earth became without form and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the water. So it wasn't created that way. Remember, when Yahweh created the earth and the heavens, it was perfect. Everything was created perfect. It was perfect. It was right. Genesis chapter 1, shows that creation and how everything was created perfectly. But it was through the defilement of sin. It was through the teaching of these gods. There was the rejection of these perfect laws that brought this defilement about. And it was the gods that were here that trespassed on the earth who caused it. And it was through the teachings that mankind chose to follow that is bringing this about. And Pastor shows, he says, if you go fishing in the Great Lakes up in Canada, when you're coming back to shore, you'll find a sign that says, don't eat more than so many ounces of this fish, because it contains these elements that will kill you if you overeat this fish. Well, who would want to eat that fish anyway? You think about it. That would be like taking, you can drink so much of this poison, but if you go over this much, you're going to die. Oh, okay, well, let me go right up to that amount, and I'll be all right. That doesn't make any sense. But it's the same way here. This is the warning that goes out. Don't eat more than this, otherwise, you're going to get sick. You're getting a dose of mercury there that could kill you. And Pastor, highlight this next part here. It just keeps getting worse. So you think about that. It keeps getting worse because nothing is being done to fix it. The only way to fix it is to stop the sin. That's the only way. It doesn't matter what devices mankind comes up with. It doesn't matter, as Pastor gets into here in verse 37 here, or verse 77, this next one down. It doesn't matter what mankind does. Mankind, as long as they reject the laws of Yahweh, nothing is going to get better. It's going to continue to get worse. Okay, and if you want to out here, the side note, if you want to put a cross reference here, you can put Revelation chapter 16 verses 3-4 right beside this verse here, where it keeps getting worse. You can put that side note there, Revelation 16 3-4, where it talks about every living thing in the sea died, and how the waters and how the waters became blood and the rivers became blood. It's through this defilement and through this contamination that this is taking place. And Pastor shows here, he says, they keep saying, we're going to clean this up. The environmentalists are on it saying that they're going to clean up the rivers. And Pastor says, like hell they are. He says, they're just making it worse. He says, they're making money too, and they're all getting paid just to leave them just like they are, or they would be fussing more than they are right now. The only reason they're fussing is because they're wanting more money, just like North Korea is wanting more money. There's nothing beneficial in them. If they go through and they're able to clean the things up and solve the problems, then they're out of a job, right? It's just like a doctor. If the doctors are able to find a cure for cancer, they find out what's causing it, and they start teaching what's causing it, then guess what? They're going to be out of a job. By continuing to do what's being done, it's job security. But don't let the news fool you on these things. They are not going to clean these things up. Everything is getting worse and will continue to get worse until you clean it up yourself. You think about the tools that we're being given. You think about everything that we're learning through what Pastor's teaching us about the microorganisms. Think about all of that and how we are going to have the trust of the microorganisms to be able to command them to go out and to do their jobs. Think about the level of trust that these little microscopic beings are going to have in us, and what we have to prove to them that we're not going to cause harm, hurt, or anything else. You're going to have some power to do it. You don't have it right now. No, you don't, but you will. You will have it. I would say in 3 years, you're going to be given full power over these nations. So think about that. The time, our salvation is nearer now, men, than when we first believed. And we're going to see some of that here in a little bit of in a later definition here. We're going to see something a little bit more about this. So kind of keep this in mind about this time period, about how much time we actually have left. In verse 78 here, it says, the earth mourns and fades away. It's fading away, and that's what you can count on right now. Do we see it improving? Do you see any improvement out here in the world? No, you're not, and you won't see it. But it's mourning, and it's fading away. It's fading away. That's what you can count on right now. I do not see any future in the earth at all. That's a pretty harsh statement when you think about it. And I don't mean harsh, but it's a real slap of truth right there when Pastor tells us that he doesn't see any future in it at all, and it's not getting better. If we look back to how it was, with some of us that are a little older, we're growing up. We remember how things were then, and we look at how things are now. It's a totally different. It's totally different, and not different in a beneficial sense either. It's getting worse. It says, if there wasn't a house of Yahweh to tell me that, I'd still know it from watching the news and keeping up with the records that are taking place. There are no improvements that I know of, not in the field of medicine or in the field of industry. I remember years ago when Pastor said there's going to come a time when antibiotics aren't going to be working. And this is when everything appeared to be working. And lo and behold, guess what? They've got antibiotics now that aren't working. They've got diseases that have, they've got bacteria, they've got diseases that have overcome and have mutated to where these antibiotics don't work anymore. They're rendered useless. And that's a scary thing. But it is all pollution, he says, and it will continue that way as it has continued for years. The earth is mourning, he shows here, and fading away, and the haughty people of the earth languish. I'd like you to take a look here at this word, languish. The haughty people, the proud people of the earth, they languish. That word languish is number 535 in Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, and it means to droop. By implication, to be sick, to mourn. Languish means to be weak, to wax feeble. They'll wax. It means they're fading away. Kind of like we talked about last week about somebody fading away from the illness of cancer, how they just kind of waste away. And the Merriam-Webster dictionary also shows it to become feeble, weak, or I don't know that word, enervated. It says to be or live in a state of depression or decreasing vitality. And remember, that word vitality has to do with those things that are necessary for life. But to live in a state of depression? The world is depressed. How many people are on antidepressants out in the world because of the state that it's in? How many advertisements do you see for this depression medication or that one? And they say, okay, well, we're going to give you this to treat depression. However, side effects could be suicidal tendencies. Where's the benefit in that? Increased lethargy, but the side effects of this sorcery of these medications is horrendous. And notice it shows it continues. It means to become dispirited, to suffer neglect, to assume an expression of grief or emotion appealing for sympathy. But to assume an expression of grief, and they are grieved. You can just see that this is the state that the world is in, this languish. So it goes pretty deep of what this word languish means. And it says, the earth is also defiled under the inhabitants of it, or by the inhabitants of it. That's why the earth is defiled, is because of what the inhabitants of the earth have done. Because they have transgressed the laws, and that's the main thing. That's the main thing they have done. It shows us why there in Isaiah 24. It says, because they have transgressed the laws. Now, highlight this next part. Highlight this next part here. Highlight this. It says, they have not followed the law that says, do not commit fornication. So they're spreading the diseases. They haven't followed the law, do not commit adultery. So they're spreading the diseases. Highlight that whole part right there. They have not followed the law that says do not commit fornication. And as a result, they're spreading diseases. They haven't followed that law that says do not commit adultery. Exodus 20:14. So they're spreading diseases. They haven't followed the law that shows concern for your fellow man or your brothers and sisters. So they're defiling the land for the mighty dollar. They're defiling the land. They're defiling the people because of their selfish lust that they have within themselves and the total disregard that they have for one another. They don't realize that that's what they're doing, but deep down, that's exactly what they're doing. When people go out and they commit fornication, they commit this adultery, they have no love for anybody. They don't even love themselves. But they're practicing these things that are bringing the vitality. They're bringing life to an end, and they're spreading these diseases with each act that they do. And it shows they haven't followed the law that shows concern for your fellow man, so they're defiling the land again for that mighty dollar. And some of those laws here that deal with this. Neglected laws that lead to disease spreading. Some of these laws here. Prohibitive law number 353, which shows that a man must not have relations with a woman until he has lawfully acquired her in marriage. Okay? Because of that, diseases are spread. That's in Exodus 22:16 through 17. Prohibitive law number 355. Do not allow your daughter to play the harlot, allowing her to commit fornication. Don't give her over to an unlawful marriage. Don't allow her to do that. We are men, we are guards of our families. We're guarding our families. Going back to, let me go back here to that Leviticus 19:29 there, which is that law there that says, do not allow your daughter to play the harlot. There's a side note there in the book of Yahweh, and don't neglect these side notes, men. Be sure you pay attention to the side notes. The side note R8 says, do not be one who gives his unmarried daughter into an unlawful marriage or other type of contract. So you don't allow her to go into that unlawful marriage. You know, we're to protect them. For your side notes or for other cross-references if you want to, for this you could put 1 Thessalonians 4:3, if you want to put that out to the side. Colossians 3:5, you can put that out to the side. And then really all of the laws that are listed in Leviticus 18, that whole chapter, applies here, applies here as well here. And that's prohibited practices here. The laws are in Leviticus 18 there, and it shows, Leviticus 18:3 shows, after the doings of the land of Egypt where you dwelt, you shall not do, and after the doings of the land of Canaan where I'm bringing you, you shall not do, neither shall you walk in their ordinances. So we're told not to conduct ourselves in the way that the world is conducting themselves. Look at the side note there that is R2. And it says, this here tells us that the deeds of the Egyptians and the Canaanites were more corrupt than those of all other nations, and that in the area of Egypt in which the children of Israel resided was more corrupt than any other area. And you think about where we are now, living in the last days. Sin is at its peak, and this is the most corrupt time that we've seen in the time period of man's history. And Yahweh is bringing a remnant, a group out who is going to prove themselves that they will do, as this book shows, to make that connection with Him and will be allowed to be with Him, and they will choose to rule as Yahweh rules. This is what we are training for here, okay? Highlight this next part here. It says they could have everything they wanted and kept the earth and mankind healthy by just following simple laws. Okay? It's just by simple laws. They could have had anything and everything that they wanted. Lawfully, without harm, without anything like that. But they could have had it if they had just followed some simple laws. Who has got Leviticus 19:18? Who has that scripture?
Leviticus 19:18. Do not seek revenge, nor bear a grudge against one of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor, whether a brother or an enemy, as yourself. I am Yahweh.
Praise Yahweh. So that we should recognize that, as Yeshua mentioned that, as what's the second greatest commandment in the law? It's right there. You're to love your brother, whether a neighbor or enemy, as yourself. See? And it's and we do that by following this law, by not seeking revenge, not bearing a grudge, not doing that with our neighbors. But it shows here, and continuing on here. Okay, we highlighted that, right? Everybody highlight that? They could have everything they wanted and kept the earth and mankind healthy just by following a few simple laws. Make sure that's highlighted, okay? Okay, they wanted to pass their own laws. And if you remember Daniel, I think it's 7:11, and it talks about this great, about these many laws and the great words that were spoken. And that goes back to all these many laws that they passed to try to prove that mankind could do this thing on their own, that they could do these things on their own without Yahweh. And of course, for 6,000 years now, they failed, and they failed miserably. It says each person who is in control for money uses the things they know damn well are going to harm the earth, the fish, and the human beings. And they think they can get away from it in their lifetime. And that's all they think about. They think about now. They think about, well, what can I get away with? How is this going to benefit me now? Do they have any care and concern for the generations that are going to come later? Absolutely not. No, otherwise they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Okay? And that's the difference between the world's mentality and our mentality. We're looking to the future. We're looking at how we can turn this around because, we see the hurt and the harm that's coming not only to the earth, but to the people of the earth. Okay? And it is indeed a miserable thing, and it's a very sad thing to see. But it's through these teachings, it's through these laws that is going to turn all of this around. And it shows that they will avoid what they have defiled the best they can, but they can go ahead and do it for the money that it brings in from the public. They can do it for the money that it brings in from the public. Who's got 1 Timothy 6:10? Who's got that one? No, right over here.
1 Timothy 6:10. For the love of money is the root of all evil, and there is some who, perishing it, have strayed from the faith. They pierce themselves through with many sorrows. O man of Yahweh, perish righteousness.
Praise Yahweh. Okay, so you can see here that 1 Timothy 6:10 tells us, for the love of money is a root of all evil. Okay, the love of money. And there are some who, pursuing it, have strayed from the faith. They deemed this money more important than the work of Yahweh. They deemed it more important than their own salvation, really, because that was what was all-consuming. That was what was placed before them, and they pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Once that gets hold, it seems like the more money you get, the more problems you have. The more stuff you have, the more possessions you have, the worse. The harder it is, the tougher things seem to be. It seems like it's just the fewer things that we have, the things that we absolutely need. We seem to have fewer problems when we don't have all this extra baggage, if you will. But it shows here that they pierce themselves through with many sorrows. O man of Yahweh. Now notice that part there. He says, O man of Yahweh, do what? Not pursue money. Pursue what? Pursue righteousness, because it's this righteousness. It's what we put within our character that is going to go with us. If we go to sleep, it doesn't matter. All of the wealth that we have acquired in this life is going to be brought to nothing. And at the time of the resurrection, the only thing we're going to have is, what did we do with our lives? What did we do with our character? How did we build our character? Okay? This is why we have to separate ourselves from this world. It says, because they've transgressed these laws, they've changed the ordinances, and they've broken the everlasting covenant. Because they have transgressed those laws and changed those ordinances and broken that everlasting covenant, because of that, the curse, because of this, not because an angel poured out a cup of liquid up there, because they've broken these laws, but because of this. It's the judgments of Yahweh. It's a cause and effect. Because of this, the curse has devoured the earth, and they who dwell therein are desolate. Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Yes, there's going to be few men left. That's the final thing. That's the burning that's going to take place. And if you take a look here where it talks about this burning. We saw some of that this last Sabbath. We saw how and we've heard we've heard quite a bit about this 1 hour burning, but here in Revelation 18, it says, therefore her plagues will come in one day. 18, 8 through 10, 17, 19, and 21. It says, therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning, and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Father Yahweh who judges her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her, they will wail over her, and they will lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. So when they see that, they're going to be wailing because standing afar off for the fear of her torment, and saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city. Notice, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. Remember what we've learned about that 1 hour. For in 1 hour, look at verse 17, for in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. All of those things that they labored for and worked for, came to nothing. And every sea captain and all the company and their ships and the sailors and who earned their living from the sea stood afar off And they cast dust on their heads, and they cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, that great city in which all who had ships in the sea were made rich through her wealth. Notice, therefore, in 1 hour what takes place? She is made desolate. And the mighty Moloch stood up a stone, like a great millstone, and cast into the sea, saying, In this way with violence will the great city Babylon be thrown down, and will be found no more at all. No, and this is all part of what's going to be brought on this great city. This is what the world is bringing upon themselves. The nations are bringing these things onto themselves. And he shows us here, he says, turn over to Isaiah 34. And I brought this out in the sermons on the wars in the Middle East. And it would be helpful if you would get those tapes and listen to them. So if you remember that was that Gulf War series, I think there were like four or five sermons, I think, in there. But it's the prophecies of the war in the Middle East. It's a sermon series. It can actually be found in the 7th book of Yisrayl, part 2. The 7th book of Yisrayl, part 2. Chapters 35 through 38, if you want to put that down, if you want to go back and read those and kind of review that. But and Pastor shows here, he says, I brought a lot of information out on what is taking place right now in Iraq, where it started with President Bush's father a few years ago. He says you need that information. They're available on tape, and I don't have time to bring them again, but you need them. And even better yet, it's in the books of Yisrayl, so we can have them with us. In verse 82 here it says, in Isaiah 34:1, it says, Come here, or come near to hear, you nations, and listen, you people. Let the earth hear, and all that is in it, and all the things come forth from it, for the indignation. Now, this is a lie. It's not the indignation of Yahweh. And this is, remember, indignation, this is one of your vocabulary words, okay? This indignation. It's not indignation. It's not the indignation of Yahweh. It's a righteous judgment. It's a judgment of Yahweh. It's a righteous judgment. If you will look up the word, they admit there is no indignation. There's no hatred there. It's purely love from Yahweh. It's purely love from Yahweh, and that He is allowing to take place. In this indignation here, if you look at it in it's word number 7110 from 7107, and it shows here it means rage or strife of man. And the thing is, it says this definition shows the indignation is among man. Okay? It says means the rage or strife of man. You see that? It's of man. It's not of Yahweh, but it's of man. And that's what it's showing here. It's showing that it's this indignation is among man and not Yahweh. It's the judgment of Yahweh to allow man to go his own way. So kind of keep that in mind when you see that. Okay? It's among men. It's about man. It's not indignation of Yahweh. Okay? In verse 83 it says, Of Yahweh is upon all nations, and His fury. No, it's not fury. It's His righteous judgment again. So remember, indignation and fury both truthfully refer to Yahweh's righteous judgments. Okay, so kind of, keep in mind those vocabulary words again, okay? And His love for mankind, upon all their armies He has utterly destroyed. No, He does not utterly destroy them. As Jeremiah said, no, you have written it wrong. You have copied it wrong. Okay? Who's got Jeremiah 8:8? Who's got that one?
Jeremiah 8:8. How can you say we are the wise, and the law of Yahweh is with us? Behold, the lying pen of the scribes has falsified them and written them wrong.
Okay, praise Yahweh. So you see, the book of Yahweh there shows that these things will be falsified and they will be written incorrectly. This would be done in order to portray Yahweh as a mean God. Okay, that was the whole reason. That was the whole reason for doing that. So, we see here, no, they've copied it. No, they've written it wrong. It was not written that way in the original. And if you start tracing it back to the original, you can find that yourself. So again, you see Jeremiah 8:8. If you want to throw another one in there with that, Jeremiah 23, 26 through 27. If you want to put that as a side note, as a kind of a cross-reference there. And that shows, and that simply shows that how long will this be in the heart of the prophets who prophesy lies? Yes, they are the prophets of the deceit of their own minds. Notice where they get it. It's not from the law of Yahweh. It's not from the prophecies. It's not inspired by Yahweh. But it comes from the deceit of their own minds. And they plan and scheme. They devise and plan and scheme to cause the people to forget my name, just as they tell everyone, just as they told every man to his neighbor, just as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal or for Lord. And we've seen that. I mean, we see that. We see that every day. We hear it every day. Okay? All right, so Pastor continues here. He says, the copyist changed it to make it out as if Yahweh was vengeful, spiteful, and mad. That he had mad cow disease, I guess, so he did not quite know what he was doing. He just knew he was damn angry and he was going to harm mankind, who he planned to give great power to begin with. You just look at the contradiction there. And Pastor's pointing it out. There's the contradiction, the confusion that's in the world. It's stupid the way that they have changed this, but the people fall for it. And the people they fell for it, and they do fall for it. Now, brethren, you're learning the truth, and you can get this in the books, and he shows it. He can prove it. Now, anybody remember just offhand what the scriptural definition of truth is? Okay, but can you give me a scripture? Okay, there's another one in Psalm 119. Praise Yahweh. I heard that right down up here up front. 142 and 151. Praise Yahweh. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay? So, but we've got another one here that actually shows that as well. It's Yachanan 8, 31 and 32. Okay? Yachanan 8, 31 and 32. We see it there as well. It says, then Yeshua said to those Yadim who believed on him, if you continue in my doctrine, then you are truly my disciples. And you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. The truth. Now look at that. You see that 3 there? Okay. The truth. Praise Yahweh. The truth is Yahweh's law. Psalm 119, 142, and 151. The Apostle Jacob called Yahweh's law the law of liberty from sin and from the penalty that sin incurs. Okay? The world wants to make out like the law is a curse. No, the law isn't a curse. The law is liberty from the curse of breaking the laws. Okay? Okay, so on page 36 up at the top, left-hand corner over there, it says, we're putting it back. I'm hoping by the time Pentecost is here to have the new translation and we'll have all of this junk corrected that mankind has messed up. He has delivered them over to the slaughter. He has allowed this. Yes, this is one of the judgments, to allow this to take place and let the gods guide them, because this is what they are doing in heaven and the universe. See, he was showing us back then that what we see taking place on earth is also taking place in the heavens. But this is what Yahweh is allowing. He's allowing this. This is so that you will know what will take place and how it will end. And continuing on here, he says, the slain will be cast out, and their stink will come out of their carcasses, and the mountains. And remember that mountains is part of that, is one of our vocabulary words, and that means here, as Pastor shows here, he says that is the uplifted places. As Brown Driver says, the places of illicit worship. Be sure to highlight that. Be sure to highlight mountains. Be sure to highlight the places of illicit worship. And highlight this next part here. It says this word illicit is referring to nothing but sex where it is defiled by mankind. Okay, make sure you highlight all of that. Mountains, that is the lifted up places. The places of illicit worship. Illicit is referring to nothing but sex where it is defiled by mankind. Okay, and Pastor continues and he shows by their damn churches and by the Catholic Church and by the so-called private clubs, they all go out for this very thing. Even the gods believe the same thing. They believe in free love, and I'm telling you, it's very costly. As you can, you've heard the saying, well, there's nothing free. There's nothing free in this world, and it's very true. There's consequences to every action out in the world. And this free love is very costly. As you can see through the diseases that are out there, through the, through the wars and through the confusion of mind. Remember, that's what all of this causes. It says, in the next 3 years you are going to see this. If you do not turn from it now, brethren, then you will not have an opportunity to do so later. Okay, you see the warning that he's given us here. If you don't turn from it now, then you will not have an opportunity to do so later. This is our opportunity. This is our time to prove to Yahweh that we are going to turn, that of what we want to do. So you will mourn, and so he says, you will mourn, weep, and gnash teeth when you see what is when you see what is coming to pass has come to pass. It's going to come to pass, and there's no doubt about it. There are too many prophecies already fulfilled. You know, Pastor, and he goes through those over and over and over again. And he shows us continually to prove to us that these things have come to pass and that we can trust fully in what is coming. It says, these uplifted places are places of illicit worship, that is, teaching against the laws that would keep you away from fornication and therefore keep you away from 125 sexually transmitted diseases. Now, I wonder how many are out there now. There were 125 back then, and I'll bet there's more now. And that's just what they know. That's not talking about what they don't know. It says they will be melted along with their blood. Yes, that is a just judgment. As we will say before Yahweh when we're before his throne, Yahweh says that Yahweh says that we will say all of your judgments are just, and we agree with every one of them. We agree with what you allowed to show the universe and what will take place. He is not going to draw back. He is going to allow this to take place, and he does not cause it. He doesn't cause it. He allows it. So remember, he is allowing this. And all of the host of heaven will be dissolved. Yes, it's as if their governments are going to change, brethren, and you are going to change them. Remember, they are going to come to the house of Yahweh. They are going to come to us for instruction. The heavens are going to be rolled together like a scroll. Yes, the sun will actually be darkened at that time. Okay, and that should bring a couple of scriptures to remembrance here. You know, where where it talks about the heavens being the heavens being departed like a scroll. That's in Revelation chapter 6, verses 12 through 14, if you want to put that down as a cross-reference. And that is the end result there. And highlight this next part. Once the sun is darkened, there is no hope for mankind after that. Highlight that sentence. Once the sun is darkened, there is no hope for mankind after that. And that's in what scripture? That's where? Matthew 24? Matthew 24:22. Unless those days were shortened, there would no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days are going to be shortened, okay? It says there is no hope for any life on the earth as we know life, because it must have sunshine in order to live. Every form of life that we know on earth has to have it. Without it, it can die out in a matter of a few days. You know, the oceans require sunlight. You know, one of the most prolific microorganisms and one of the most prolific organisms in the ocean, plankton, has to have sunlight. You know, the plants need to have sunlight. The trees, we cannot live without sunlight. You see how cool it's gotten here over the past week and a half, couple of weeks, how cool it gets at night? Can you imagine if it was that way all the time, where the sun didn't shine, how cold it would be and how quickly we wouldn't be able to function? Okay? All of their hosts will fall down. That is, they will fail in what they have done. They will show their failure in what they have done. As the leaf falls from the vine, having no more life, showing that it has no more life in it. As the fig tree falls, the same. As my sword, he says, will be bathed in heaven. And Pastor says, poppycock, the decision to allow this came from heaven. And that's what this verse actually says. And if you want to take a look at Revelation 18:1, kind of as a side note there, that shows that. So verse looks like about 93 here, the top right-hand column there on page 36. Then he gives you the nations here that are involved in that beginning, in the beginning of this. Then at last he gives you Satan herself. Now highlight this next part here, all the way through this next sentence here. The wife of Yahweh is the ringleader in bringing this about because of her jealousy for mankind and not wanting mankind to have the superpower that he will receive. Okay? Highlight that sentence. The wife of Yahweh is the ringleader in bringing this about because her jealousy for mankind and not wanting mankind to have the superpower that he will receive. You see her in verse 14, the wild beast of the desert will also meet with the wild beast of the island and the satyr? Satyr? Okay, satyr? I don't know. S-A-T-Y-R. This is a showdown, as Isaiah 14:15 says. The demons will cry to his fellow, the screech owl. The screech owl. This is a vocabulary word. The screech owl. They translated this screech owl and highlight this. Highlight screech owl and highlight this next part here. It says they translated this screech owl. It's actually Lilith or Lucifer, the first wife of Yahweh. So highlight that. Screech owl. It's actually Lilith or Lucifer, the first wife of Yahweh. Some Hebrew books say Lilith was the first wife of Adam, but there is no record of that. She was the wife of Yahweh who was given great power. And if you turn over to, well, we can't turn over unless you've got your book of Yahweh there. So we'll take a look at Yechezkel chapter 28. If you want to mark this as a cross reference here, Yechezkel 28, 12 through 16. It says, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre and say to him, this is what Father Yahweh says, you were the seal of the full measure of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Okay, and this is describing Satan. This is describing Hillel. You are in Eden, the garden of Yahweh, and every precious stone was your covering. Okay, remember there was a series of sermons that was given concerning these stones. And remember, each one of these stones represents a certain characteristic. A certain characteristic. Your covering was the ruby, which was submission to Yahweh and those over you. The topaz, which was purity or to be pure. The emerald, which was to heal. The chrysolite, to reverence. The onyx, zeal. The jasper, Yahweh is our strength. The sapphire, the book of Yahweh, namely the Holy Scriptures. And the sapphire, the turquoise, the law of Yahweh, and the beryl to give light. The workmanship of your settings and the mountings were made of gold, and the day that you were created, they were prepared for you. And this continues to show here, you were the guardian cherub, and I married you on the holy mountain of Yahweh, and you have walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. You were perfect. Notice, she was perfect in her ways from the day that she was created until, notice, something was found within her. Iniquity or sin was found in you. By the multitude of your merchandise, they have filled the midst of you with violence, and you have sinned. Therefore, I will cast you as profane out of the mountain of Yahweh, and I will destroy you from the midst of the stones of fire, O guardian cherub. Now, this next part here, I didn't keep up with that. But this is a side note. This is a side note, and this is just part of the side note that's here in Yechezkel 18. It says, Yechezkel 28. It says, as Yechezkel 28:13 shows, Satan now has only 9 of the 12 stones or qualities remaining in her. At one time, she had all 12. And the missing qualities were the jacinth, which was Yahweh's name, the agate. Notice what the agate was for. The ability to restore life, to convert, to return to Yahweh, to draw breath, and to return. And the amethyst, which is to join closely. Yahweh removed these from Satan because she no longer has the right. She no longer had the right to be his wife. Let me see here. And bear his name. Neither has she had the right to have any further say in Yahweh's creative, restorative, and converting process. However, in her attempts to overthrow Yahweh, Satan has totally perverted the 9 remaining righteous stones or characteristics she still possesses. So she's perverted those things. And these 9 remaining characteristics she has are now totally evil. Okay, so she is totally totally defiled that righteous character that Yahweh had given her because of her iniquity, because of her sin, because of her wanting to be as a god, because she lifted herself up. Now, if you take a look, like I said, if you look in your book of Yahweh off onto the right-hand column over there, right side, there's a big long paragraph in there, and it gives you actually a series of sermons that goes over all of those, the sermons of the high priest breastplate, and goes over those characteristics, okay? Okay, but she was given this great power. Now, it says this first wife of Yahweh, and notice here in verse 95, this next paragraph, highlight this. It says, will also find rest. That is, they will meet their deaths. They will die and find herself a place of rest. This is where she comes to an end. Okay, so highlight that paragraph right there. Will also find rest. That is, they will meet their deaths and they will die and find herself a place of rest. This is where she will come to her end. Okay. In Isaiah 35:3, strengthen the hands and make firm the feeble knees. And this is not talking about actual weakness of the muscles. It's talking about the trembling or fear in the body. Okay, it's talking about the trembling or fear in the body. Brethren, we can trust Yahweh. Okay, we can trust Yahweh. We have to trust Yahweh. Yahweh is our only protection. We can't trust in ourselves. We have to trust that Yahweh is going to protect us. It says, his house can trust him, and I want to assure you of this. I want to assure you of this. In Psalm 110, verses 4 through 6, it shows where Yahweh has vowed an oath and he will not relent or he will not change his mind. He promises this protection that we will be a priesthood forever after the order of Melchizedek, okay? And that we're going to have, we're going to have this protection. Okay, we're going to have this protection. He has gone to extremes to teach us what is going to take place. Look at the care and concern, men, that Yahweh has done, Yahweh did in protecting. Just go back to the protection of Moshe. Okay? Go back to the protection that he afforded Moshe. Protection from Pharaoh, from being among the firstborn that were to be killed. You think about how that protection continued. Look at how the children of Israel and how his plan was protected, how they were brought out of Egypt, how they were protected from a certain number of the last of those plagues that came upon the Egyptians, and how they were protected when they were led out of Egypt, when they were led out of that land. They were led and they were protected from the pursuing army of Pharaoh. Look at I can't think of their Hebrew names offhand. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You look at those three men, how they were protected because they trusted in Yahweh. They stood strong. They said, we don't have to be answered, O king, and how we answer you in this matter. For Yahweh is able to save us. Their faith, and their trust was 110% in Yahweh. And their belief was, and may he save us, O king. And that was one of the things that really strikes me about their boldness that they had. And may he save it. And we pray that he saves us, O king. But if he will not, know this, that we will not bow down to you. We will not serve your gods. I'm not going to buckle. I'm going to stand for righteousness. I'm going to stand for Yahweh. And he was protected. Those men were protected. They were protected. You look at Yeshua. Yeshua, Messiah, was protected. Yeah, he was protected he was protected from the killing. When they sent out to try to kill all of the firstborn, because Herod knew what was coming up. He knew what was coming down the road. So that protection was there. Men, there have been many instances of protection for Yahweh's house in these last days. And if you've been around a little bit, we know. We've seen them. We've seen how the weather and how the snow had turned a multitude of people away that were intent on bringing harm to Yahweh's house. And, and the thing is, that's just the things that we know. That's just the things that we see. Imagine what Yahweh has done that we haven't seen yet. But we know fully that Yahweh is protecting this house because he promises this house is not going to be allowed to be put in the grave. We can bank on that 110%. He has gone to extremes, he says, back to the book. He has gone to extremes to teach us what is going to take place. We are not in darkness. We are not in darkness as this world is. No, we're not in this darkness. We're not being led astray because of false doctrine. Because what comes forth from Yahweh's house is the laws of Yahweh. It is the truth. It is the only light of truth on this world, in this world. Highlight this next part, man. Yahweh tells us he is going to protect us for the work's sake. If we remain strong in the work. Okay? Look at this. Again, Yahweh tells us he is going to protect us for the work's sake if we will remain strong in the work. Okay? That is exactly what we are going to have to do. It's exactly what we're going to have to do. Okay? Who has got 1 Thessalonians 5 through 6? Anybody have that one? I think I slipped that one out there. All right, praise Yahweh.
1 Thessalonians 5 through 6. You are all the children of the light and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober.
Okay, praise Yahweh. So we can see here that we are the children of the light. Look at the side notes here where it says, let us not sleep. Okay, notice here what that word sleep. G2 says, here sleep is meant for contempt of salvation when men continue to sin and will not awake to righteousness. Okay, and then G3 here where it says, but let us watch and be sober and not be overcome with the cares of this world. Remember, the cares of this world are going to pass away. First Yachanan 2, I think it is. It's the left-hand side of the page, right column down at the bottom. Is the best place I can tell you in the book of Yahweh where it is. I can't remember the exact scripture. But it says, remember, the love of the life, the love of the world, the pride of life is passing away. And it's all going to pass away. Okay? It says, say to those who have a fearful mind, be strong and do not fear. Behold, Yahweh your Father will come. It is not vengeance, it's performing his judgments. His judgments that are already made are written for us. And he says, turn over to Revelation. He says, I know we're facing some really difficult days. You're going to see this grow very rapidly worse. Okay? And it's coming. It says, in Revelation 3:7, to the Moloch of the congregation of the house of Yahweh in Philadelphia, that vocabulary word, Philadelphia, it says, this means where the true love of Yahweh is taught. So highlight that. Highlight Philadelphia, and highlight this is where the true love of Yahweh is taught, the 613 laws. Okay? Philadelphia, this is where the true love of Yahweh is taught, the 613 laws. Okay? And the people say, I love him, and they do not even know what love is to begin with. They don't know. They could probably go around the corner to find another man that they love or another woman that they love. Remember, love is keeping the laws of Yahweh. 1 Yachanan 5:3, if you want to cross-reference that. That's what love is. Love is keeping the laws of Yahweh. It's not shacking up. It's not committing fornication. It's not committing adultery. It's not doing any of that. It's these prohibited practices here. It's not any of these prohibited practices here that we covered in the beginning of class. It is none of those. That is not what love is. Love is the keeping of the laws of Yahweh. So, with that, men, I think we're at a decent stopping point at the bottom of page 36. We'll pick up here, and we'll finish this chapter out next week. And then, you know what it is? It's test time. Okay, so with that, I pray that Yahweh will be with you. Yahweh bless you.